"You picked the wrong truck today," a voice called out, sharp and teasing, cutting through the fog that clung to the edges of the interstate. Marcus, Big Mac, Johnson gripped the steering wheel of his 18-wheeler, the faded red paint catching the early morning sunlight in streaks as he eased the rig into the slow lane, his knuckles white but his posture relaxed. The rumble of the diesel engine vibrated beneath his hands, a familiar, grounding rhythm, while the faint smell of coffee from the travel mug in the cup holder mingled with the crisp scent of asphalt and pine. From behind, a group of motorcycles approached, their engines growling in unison, and he could see them weaving through the fog like predators circling a cornered animal. The lead rider, a tall man with a leather jacket and mirrored visor, leaned forward, gesturing wildly, laughter echoing off the metal guardrails. Marcus didn't flinch. He adjusted the rearview mirrors, noting the glint of sunlight bouncing off their chrome, the subtle sway of their coordinated movement, and the way the fog softened the edges of their figures into almost ghostly shapes. He let his eyes wander to the highway stretching ahead, the double yellow lines cutting a precise path through the morning haze, a quiet contrast to the chaos behind him. His sweatshirt, gray and slightly worn at the seams, was pulled snug over his shoulders, and the faint ripple of muscle beneath the fabric betrayed a strength most wouldn't guess from his frame. Each gear shift was deliberate, measured, a silent assertion of control over the massive rig he commanded daily. The wind ruffled the loose papers tucked in the side console, a minor nuisance, but he ignored it, focusing instead on the sound of tires against asphalt, the occasional call of a distant bird, and the way the fog clung to the edges of the trees lining the highway. The motorcycles drew closer, their laughter now tinged with mockery as they shouted obscenities about his size and the rig he drove, jabbing at him with fingers, waving their arms like they were orchestrating some elaborate, menacing dance. Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly, but the corners of his mouth twitched with a hint of amusement, not fear. He'd been in tight spots before, roads less traveled, storms that turned visibility to zero, drivers who underestimated his skill, and he had learned patience, observation, and timing in equal measure. A crow cawed from a telephone pole, wings stretching wide in the morning light, and Marcus followed its flight for a heartbeat, letting the world settle around him, the chaos behind reduced to shapes and sounds he could predict and maneuver around. He tapped the dashboard lightly, feeling the subtle vibrations beneath his fingertips, counting seconds in his head, measuring the distance and the angles, a silent calculation that made him invisible to the arrogance behind him. The lead rider revved his engine, pointing at him and shouting something unintelligible, expecting a reaction, a flinch, a mistake. But Marcus kept his gaze steady on the road ahead, his breathing even, slow, controlled, the cab of the truck a sanctuary from the aggression pressing in from all sides. He adjusted the rear view again, seeing the expressions in their visors, the unspoken challenge, and without moving a muscle, he tapped the horn lightly, a single, deliberate note that echoed across the asphalt. The sound was small, unassuming, yet it drew their attention fully, breaking the rhythm of their laughter, and for a fraction of a second, their synchronized confidence faltered. Marcus shifted slightly in his seat, hand brushing the fabric of his worn gloves, eyes scanning the fog, the guardrails, the empty stretches of road, the distant hills cloaked in mist. The engine hummed beneath him, steady and reassuring, each pulse in tune with his heartbeat, and he allowed himself a small, private smile. He hadn't moved recklessly, hadn't reacted to the taunts, hadn't let the mockery touch him, but he had already begun setting the stage, letting the rhythm of the highway and the precision of his actions speak louder than words. The motorcycles slowed slightly, uncertainty creeping into their formation as they watched him, their gestures sharp, erratic, no longer synchronized. Marcus's eyes, calm but alert, flicked to a small detail in the side mirror, a glint of sunlight on a badge of sorts on one of the rider's jackets, a hint of overconfidence that would soon be their undoing. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of damp asphalt and pine deeper into the cab, a reminder of the world beyond the intimidation, a world he knew how to navigate with ease and patience. And as the sun crested a low hill ahead, light spilling gold across the road, Marcus tightened his grip on the wheel, posture straight, eyes forward, unyielding, preparing silently for the moment the arrogance behind him would meet the calm, deliberate skill of a man who had survived far more than this. The motorcycles hesitated for a heartbeat, their engines vibrating low and uncertain against the damp asphalt, the laughter that had filled the foggy morning now replaced with a tense silence. Marcus kept his eyes forward, noting the subtle changes in the formation, the way the lead rider shifted weight from one foot to the other, the mirrored visor catching sunlight in an irregular flash, betraying the momentary hesitation. The highway stretched before him in an endless ribbon of gray, the yellow lines bright against the worn pavement, wet from an overnight drizzle, each puddle reflecting a distorted image of the forested hills flanking the road. Inside the cab, the air smelled faintly of pine and diesel, a familiar combination that had grounded him through thousands of miles, long nights, and isolated stretches of interstate. He adjusted the seat slightly, feeling the worn leather shift beneath his weight, each creak a reminder of the countless journeys he had made, the small comforts that came with routine, the rhythm of his own controlled breathing. The motorcycles circled like hesitant shadows, their riders exchanging glances that Marcus could not see but could feel in the subtle changes of engine revs and tire pressure. A jaybird called from a nearby telephone pole, wings spread wide as it shifted, and Marcus followed its movement for a fraction of a second, letting the simple, natural motion anchor his mind, a counterpoint to the tension behind him. He turned his attention to the mirrors, catching glimpses of the chrome helmets glinting, the black leather jackets, the posture of anticipation, the unspoken challenge that hung in the space between them. The fog was beginning to lift, thin streaks of golden sunlight piercing through, outlining the trees in sharp relief, the forested slopes on either side casting long, muted shadows across the roadway. The motorcycles edged closer, but the earlier confidence had dissipated, replaced with a careful, measured approach as if they had begun to question the certainty they had held a moment ago. Marcus let his hand rest lightly on the wheel, thumb brushing the textured leather, eyes scanning for every detail, every irregularity in the asphalt, every subtle movement from the riders, his senses tuned to anticipation without haste. The wind shifted again, carrying the scent of damp earth and pine needles more sharply into the cab, a reminder of the world beyond the intimidation, a world he had traversed countless times, unshaken, relying on awareness and calm precision. He tapped the dashboard with a fingertip, noting the slight vibration of the engine in response, a subtle connection to the machinery that mirrored his own internal steadiness. The motorcycle slowed slightly, unsure of the next move, the lead rider gesturing for a closer inspection, but Marcus maintained the same calm, measured posture, breathing steady, eyes forward, letting the anticipation stretch, thick and palpable, across the empty highway. The reflection of sunlight on the side mirrors caught his attention, highlighting the subtle tilt of the helmets and the brief, uneven revving of engines that revealed the faintest trace of doubt. He allowed himself a small smile, private, unseen, acknowledging the effectiveness of restraint and observation, a quiet mastery that required no display of force, no hastened movement, only the subtle projection of control and readiness. The fog was thinning, revealing the distant hills and the winding ribbon of road ahead, each curve and incline a calculated opportunity to navigate safely and efficiently, and Marcus followed each with unwavering focus. The motorcycles behind him reduced to hesitant shapes, their confidence tempered by his quiet, deliberate presence, the highway stretching forward, calm and steady, as if the world itself had paused to observe the exchange of presence and awareness. Marcus shifted his weight slightly in the driver's seat, the worn leather conforming to his posture, each adjustment deliberate, measured, a rhythm he had honed through years on the road and months of disciplined training long before he ever climbed behind the wheel of a semi-truck. The fog had lifted more noticeably now, sunlight filtering through the trees in soft golden shafts that cut across the asphalt in uneven patterns, the shadows of branches stretching long and thin across the yellow lane markers. His eyes scanned the road ahead, noting every crack, every patch of uneven pavement, the subtle rise and fall of the highway that could affect the handling of the heavy rig, and in the mirrors behind him, He observed the motorcycles lingering at a cautious distance, their engines idling with a muted growl, riders shifting weight, hesitant, unsure. The hum of the diesel was steady beneath his hands, the vibrations a constant pulse that matched his calm heartbeat, each gear shift precise, controlled, the tires gripping the damp asphalt with reassuring predictability. He reached for the water bottle in the cup holder, taking a slow sip, feeling the warmth spread through his chest, the liquid grounding him further in the familiar cadence of his surroundings. The wind had picked up slightly, rustling the papers tucked into the side console, the leaves along the roadside fluttering in a delicate dance that contrasted sharply with the uneasy stillness behind him. Marcus allowed his eyes to drift momentarily to the landscape flanking the highway, the forested hills rolling gently in the distance, mist curling lazily between the trunks of pine and oak, sunlight bouncing off droplets of dew clinging to branches, a serene scene that belied the tension trailing him. He flexed his fingers on the wheel, feeling the textured grip beneath his palms, the subtle vibrations translating the road's nuances directly to his senses, and he noted the glint of a chrome mirror on one of the motorcycles, catching the sun at an angle that betrayed a flicker of doubt in the lead rider. Marcus's gaze returned to the highway, the double yellow lines sharp and unwavering, guiding the path forward, a reminder of order in a world that had tried to intimidate him. A crow passed overhead, wings wide and steady, and for a moment he followed its flight with the corner of his eye, a private acknowledgement of motion and awareness that contrasted with the stillness of the cab and the muted uncertainty of those behind him. He tapped his knuckle lightly against the dashboard, a soft, controlled sound that harmonized with the engine's low rumble, a silent measure of time and space, gauging the rhythm of the motorcycles and the spacing between vehicles. Marcus allowed a small, private smile to touch the corners of his mouth, not for anyone to see but for himself, a recognition of the subtle shift in the energy trailing him, the unspoken realization that his presence alone had introduced uncertainty. The sun rose higher, the light growing warmer, filtering through the trees in wide beams that danced across the cab interior, glinting off the chrome of the mirrors and the metallic surfaces of the truck's dashboard, painting patterns that shifted with the truck's movement, a calm, almost hypnotic display of light and shadow that mirrored the steady confidence Marcus radiated without a word. The motorcycles hesitated once more, engines buzzing low, riders exchanging quick, uncertain gestures beneath their helmets, and Marcus's posture remained unwavering, shoulders squared, eyes fixed ahead, hands firm on the wheel, each breath slow and measured, as if the road itself had slowed to accommodate his deliberate, unflinching presence. He reached down briefly to adjust the side mirror, the small, practiced movement seamless, unremarkable, yet each subtle action reinforced his control over the vehicle, the space, and the moment, signaling readiness without aggression. The fog had receded entirely now, the highway fully revealed, stretching into the distance with its curves and inclines precise and predictable, and Marcus allowed himself a brief, quiet acknowledgement of the familiar hum of diesel beneath him, the scent of warm asphalt and pine, the soft shift of light across the cab, all reinforcing the calm, observant command he maintained over the rig, the environment, and the presence of those lingering behind him, hesitant, uncertain, and watching. The motorcycles remained at a cautious distance, their engines humming softly, almost hesitant, as if the rhythm of the highway and the deliberate calm of Marcus had created an invisible boundary they did not dare cross. Marcus adjusted the seat again, the worn leather stretching comfortably beneath him, a subtle reminder of the countless miles he had driven, the long nights alone on the interstate, the endless stretches of asphalt that taught patience, observation, and quiet control. The sunlight had climbed higher, warm and golden, spilling across the cab interior and glinting off the dashboard, the chrome mirrors, and the faint metallic surfaces of the rig, painting a shifting pattern of light and shadow that moved with each slight turn of the steering wheel. He glanced at the side mirrors, noting the movement of the riders behind him, the careful spacing, the glint of sunlight reflecting off helmets, the way they shifted from foot to foot, subtle gestures betraying the uncertainty Marcus could feel without seeing every detail. The hum of the diesel engine was steady beneath his hands, a constant, grounding pulse that matched the measured rhythm of his breathing. Each gear shift precise, deliberate, unhurried, as though he were conducting a silent orchestra in which each vibration and sound had its place and timing. The highway stretched ahead, empty and open, yellow lines clear and unbroken, guiding the way through rolling hills and dense clusters of trees, the shadows of trunks and branches reaching across the road in long, soft fingers that shifted with the rising sun. Marcus reached for his thermos, unscrewing the cap and taking a slow sip, the warmth of coffee spreading through his chest, a simple comfort in the midst of tension, a familiar anchor in a world that seemed poised to test him at every moment. The motorcycles edged forward slightly, their motion hesitant, the riders casting glances at one another, uncertainty creeping into their posture, the unspoken question lingering in the air of whether to proceed or retreat. Marcus allowed his eyes to drift momentarily to the horizon, the gentle rise and fall of the hills, the way the trees moved slightly in the breeze, the small bird that darted from branch to branch, wings catching sunlight in quick flashes, all observed and cataloged in a calm, silent awareness that extended beyond the cab and the asphalt, encompassing the world in a way only he could feel fully. He tapped the dashboard lightly, a soft, rhythmic sound that harmonized with the hum of the engine, the movement of the tires on the wet asphalt, the faint echo of distant bird calls and the rustle of leaves, a small gesture of control, of attention to every detail, of mindfulness that kept the world at bay and his focus sharp. The motorcycle slowed further, the riders pausing as if the landscape and the measured presence of Marcus had altered their perception, the arrogance of the morning tempered by the quiet certainty he radiated without a word, without a gesture, simply by the way he held himself, shoulders squared, hands firm on the wheel, eyes calm and unwavering, reading the subtle signals of distance, speed, and alignment as if the road itself whispered guidance to him. The sunlight shifted, brushing across the windshield in warm, angled beams, illuminating the slight imperfections in the paint of the truck. The dust settled on the dashboard, the soft fabric of his gloves, each detail noted but unremarked, a quiet meditation on control and precision. Marcus allowed his gaze to linger for a moment on the edge of the forest where sunlight touched the leaves, highlighting the green and gold in a way that contrasted with the steady gray of the asphalt, a visual counterpoint to the tense, uncertain energy trailing behind him. The motorcycles hesitated again, subtle, minor gestures of doubt now clear in the faint tilt of helmets, the shifting of weight, the gentle revving and easing of throttle, each micro-movement betraying their unease, while Marcus continued along the highway, eyes fixed, hands steady, the rhythm of the engine, the road, and his awareness perfectly aligned, a silent, unshakable command that seemed to bend the space around him into order and certainty. Marcus felt the subtle shift in the air, a change that was almost imperceptible, yet familiar to him from years of training and discipline, a signal that the situation was on the verge of revealing itself in ways that words could not anticipate. His hands rested lightly on the wheel, each finger aware of the texture of the leather, the gentle hum of the engine beneath them, the vibrations translating into a sensory map of control and readiness. The sunlight had climbed higher, pouring golden streaks across the windshield and illuminating the dust motes suspended in the cab, each particle catching the light like tiny points of attention, unnoticed by the motorcycles behind him, but visible to the keen eye of someone who had learned to see patterns and subtle cues. Marcus adjusted his posture slightly, letting his shoulders drop, his spine straight, his eyes forward, a combination of calm confidence and quiet vigilance, the kind that radiated power without declaration, that suggested mastery of both environment and self. The motorcycles wavered in their formation, the lead rider leaning slightly forward, helmet tilting in a subtle measure of uncertainty, engines idling with a muted growl, the air between them charged with tension but devoid of action, a moment suspended in time where anticipation alone carried weight. Marcus's gaze swept across the rolling hills flanking the highway, the trees moving gently in the breeze, their shadows stretching and compressing across the asphalt as the sun traced its slow arc, a visual rhythm that contrasted with the underlying intensity trailing behind him. He sipped from his thermos, the warmth of the coffee grounding him further, reinforcing a calm focus, and he allowed a moment to appreciate the quiet discipline in the simple gestures, adjusting a mirror, turning the wheel slightly, reading the subtle movements behind him, each action measured, intentional, signaling an awareness that went far beyond the immediate threat. The fog had fully lifted, leaving clarity in its place, and the motorcycles responded, hesitating, unsure, their coordinated confidence now tempered by the invisible assertion of control Marcus exerted with posture, timing, and presence alone. He noted the glint of sunlight on chrome surfaces, the small reflections on helmets, the shifting weight of the riders, and mentally cataloged every nuance, a rapid internal map of energy and motion, anticipating shifts, predicting responses, a silent command over the unfolding scene. The hum of the engine blended with the faint whine through the open cab window, carrying the scent of pine, damp earth, and asphalt, a sensory overlay that reinforced awareness, and Marcus allowed his eyes to wander briefly to a bird gliding above, wings steady, the motion smooth and precise, a quiet reflection of the composure he maintained, the discipline that required no display of force but only presence and timing. The motorcycles edged slightly closer, the riders exchanging gestures, subtle, muted, almost imperceptible, and Marcus remained centered, aware, prepared, the calm certainty in his posture conveying a readiness that did not need proclamation. Light and shadow moved across the cab and the road, patterns shifting with the vehicle, and Marcus allowed himself a small, private acknowledgement of the mastery of observation and restraint, the control over his environment, a quiet confidence that the unfolding moment would reveal itself in the precise way he had prepared for, a demonstration of patience, focus, and measured skill honed through years of experience both on the road and in discipline training. Marcus took a slow, deliberate breath, feeling the steady vibration of the diesel beneath his hands, each pulse a quiet confirmation of control and focus, the cab warm with the rising sun spilling across the dashboard, glinting off the chrome edges and illuminating the soft fabric of his worn gloves. The highway stretched ahead, a ribbon of asphalt flanked by dense pine and oak, the shadows long and thin, shifting gently with the movement of the truck, light and dark dancing in subtle rhythm, a quiet symphony that contrasted with the lingering hum of the motorcycles behind him. His eyes scanned the road ahead, noting every undulation, every subtle curve, the glint of moisture from an overnight drizzle reflecting sunlight and faint sparks that required no reaction but drew awareness. The riders behind him had slowed almost imperceptibly, engines low, hesitant, the confidence that had carried them. From the previous miles now replaced by a cautious calculation as if they were testing the limits of the rhythm Marcus maintained without effort. He shifted slightly in his seat, letting the muscles in his back stretch, shoulders squared, posture upright, and the subtle movements of his hands on the wheel mirrored the careful alignment of his mind, every thought and gesture measured, deliberate, ready to respond without haste. The cab smelled faintly of pine from the open windows, coffee from the thermos in the cup holder, and the lingering scent of asphalt warmed by the sun, a familiar combination that grounded him in the present moment. Marcus allowed his gaze to flick briefly to the mirrors, noting the glint of helmets, the tilt of heads, the slight misalignment of their formation, subtle signs of uncertainty that he cataloged silently, awareness threading through him like a quiet current, present but unspoken. He adjusted the rearview mirror slightly, a small, precise gesture, the reflection revealing more than what appeared on the surface. Hesitation, a faltering rhythm in the engine hums, the subtle way the lead rider's weight shifted forward in anticipation of a move Marcus had not made. The wind carried the faint rustle of leaves, distant bird calls, and the whisper of tires across wet patches of road, layering the scene with texture that Marcus absorbed effortlessly. Each sound a signal, each scent a grounding point, a map of the environment woven into his perception without thought. The motorcycles edged a little closer, still cautious, but their movements more tentative, a reaction not to words but to the confidence and measured presence that Marcus exuded with every quiet breath, every controlled micromotion, every calculated shift of weight and glance. Sunlight shifted again, casting beams across the cab, highlighting the contours of the dashboard, the slight imperfections of the worn paint on the truck, the soft fabric of his shirt, all mundane details infused with significance as markers in a landscape where awareness and timing mattered more than speed or volume. He flexed his fingers lightly on the wheel, feeling the texture, the vibration, the pulse of the engine, a silent communication that kept him tethered to both machine and road. The motorcycles trailing with an unease that grew imperceptibly yet unmistakably, their confidence measured against the quiet mastery Marcus maintained. Each moment stretched, elongated, every second a careful calibration of perception and patience. The empty highway, a stage where tension existed without confrontation, a test of awareness and presence that Marcus met with steady eyes, even breath, and a quiet, undeniable command of the space around him. The motorcycles hesitated once more, subtle gestures betraying the thought of reconsideration, of withdrawal, and Marcus, seated high above the asphalt, did nothing but maintain his rhythm, his gaze forward, his presence absolute, and the road ahead flowed uninterrupted, a perfect, unbroken line of asphalt, sun, and shadow. The motorcycles were now clearly struggling to maintain formation, engines low and throbbing with uncertainty, riders exchanging brief, hurried gestures that betrayed hesitation and doubt. Marcus adjusted the steering wheel ever so slightly, a near imperceptible movement that shifted the weight of the 18-wheeler just enough to make the trailing vehicles instinctively reassess spacing and timing, their coordinated rhythm faltering as a subtle tension rippled through the group. Sunlight poured through the cab windows, catching dust particles in warm beams that illuminated the soft creases in his worn gloves and the faint scratches along the dashboard, details unnoticed by those behind but clear to Marcus, who absorbed every nuance with a practiced eye. He allowed his gaze to sweep across the road ahead, the black asphalt stretching in a perfect line between dense clusters of pines and oaks, their shadows stretching and contracting as the morning light traveled across the landscape, painting the highway with a pattern of gold and green that seemed to mirror his own calm, controlled movement. The sound of the diesel engine was steady beneath him, a reassuring vibration that translated through the wheel and seat into an instinctive rhythm, connecting mind, body, and machine into a seamless extension of focus and awareness. Marcus took a slow sip from his thermos, the warmth grounding him further, as he noted the smallest indicators in the side mirrors, the tilt of helmets, the subtle shift of weight, the minor revs of throttles that marked uncertainty without requiring confrontation. Each detail formed a quiet map in his mind, movements cataloged and interpreted in real time, a dance of anticipation and subtle communication that relied on observation rather than action. The motorcycles edged forward slightly, still tentative, but now slower, the confidence that had propelled them earlier tempered by the silent, unyielding presence Marcus maintained through posture, focus, and steady rhythm. The cab smelled faintly of warm asphalt, pine, and diesel, comforting and familiar, a sensory anchor that reinforced awareness and the measured patience that had carried him through countless journeys and more testing situations than this. He flexed his fingers lightly over the wheel, each movement precise, deliberate, a tactile dialogue between driver and machine, translating the smallest micro-adjustments of the road into controlled motion, and he observed the glint of sunlight on mirrors and chrome with the quiet acknowledgement of patterns only he could detect. Marcus's posture remained upright, shoulders relaxed yet firm, gaze forward, his breathing slow and even, each exhale deliberate, conveying calm authority without a single word or gesture beyond presence. The shadows along the highway shifted imperceptibly as the trees swayed in a gentle breeze, the subtle interplay of light, shadow, and movement providing a constantly evolving background that Marcus read with ease, integrating environmental cues with the human signals behind him. The motorcycles made a minor adjustment, the lead rider leaning forward, a flicker of doubt crossing the visor, their formation now slightly fractured, the rhythm of their collective movement disrupted by the quiet mastery Marcus exuded without speaking. He allowed a slow blink, eyes sweeping one final time over the mirrors and road ahead, noting the hesitation that had crept fully into their posture, engines softening, and he returned focus entirely to the path forward, the cab filled with warm sunlight and the subtle hum of diesel, each detail reinforcing the calm control he maintained and the unspoken command he projected across the asphalt stretching endlessly before him. Marcus allowed a long, steady breath to pass through him, the vibration of the diesel beneath his hands a soft, consistent hum that matched the rhythm of his own heartbeat, calm and measured. The highway stretched ahead, a smooth expanse of black asphalt bordered by dense pine and oak, the golden sunlight casting long shadows that shifted gently as the truck advanced, the interplay of light and dark creating a subtle, mesmerizing pattern that Marcus absorbed with practiced ease. He adjusted the seat slightly, feeling the leather stretch and conform to his frame, each movement deliberate, reinforcing balance and posture, while his fingers traced the wheel with precise awareness. Every micro-adjustment, an unspoken command over the machine and its motion. The motorcycles behind him remained tentative, engines buzzing softly, riders exchanging fleeting glances, subtle hesitation evident in their posture. The earlier confidence now tempered by observation, the rhythm of the cab and its driver setting an invisible boundary that did not require confrontation. Marcus sipped from his thermos, the warmth of the coffee grounding him further, a small comfort against the quiet tension of the morning, and he allowed his eyes to scan the mirrors, noting minute shifts, a flash of chrome, the tilt of a helmet, the way a weight shifted slightly forward, all forming a mental map of motion and energy that he cataloged without effort. The wind carried a gentle rustle of leaves, the distant call of a bird, the faint hum of tires on wet asphalt, layering the scene with sensory cues that Marcus registered and integrated seamlessly into his perception, a blend of instinct, observation, and calm preparedness. He let his gaze drift to the roadside, watching the sun illuminate dew on pine needles, light bouncing off the tips in a golden sparkle, a momentary detail that balanced focus and awareness, a natural rhythm observed but not distracted by. The motorcycles edged forward slightly, still careful, their formation disrupted by uncertainty, the lead rider leaning in subtly, movements small and tentative, engines soft, as if testing the limits of the confidence that Marcus projected without word or gesture. He flexed his fingers on the wheel, feeling the textures and vibrations of both asphalt and machine, each sensation a guide to motion, an extension of calm command that communicated readiness without declaration. The cab smelled faintly of pine, warm asphalt, and the residual coffee from the thermos, a familiar sensory mix that reinforced the present and the discipline Marcus carried, each detail grounding him in a world where patience and precision mattered more than haste or noise. Sunlight shifted across the cab, highlighting subtle imperfections in paint, slight creases in gloves, the curves of the dashboard, all mundane yet illuminated by perception, transforming ordinary details into elements of focus and awareness. Marcus's posture remained upright and steady, shoulders relaxed yet firm, gaze unwavering, breathing slow and even, each exhale deliberate, projecting quiet authority into the space behind him. The shadows along the road continued to shift as trees swayed in the morning breeze, the contrast of light and dark moving rhythmically across the asphalt, complementing the steady, controlled movement of the truck and the presence of Marcus, whose calm mastery radiated silently, altering the energy and anticipation of the motorcycles trailing behind. Marcus felt a subtle shift in the energy trailing him, a near imperceptible change that made the hairs on the back of his neck raise slightly, a familiar signal from years of observing and adapting to environments where awareness meant the difference between hesitation and confidence. He adjusted the rearview mirror with a gentle motion, eyes flicking to catch the tiniest movements behind, noting the motorcycle's staggered positions, the slight misalignment that had emerged over the past several minutes, the hesitation that now radiated from the riders like an invisible wave. The highway stretched out in front of him, smooth and unbroken, bordered by dense forests that filtered the sunlight into ribbons of gold and shadow that shifted as the morning progressed, each curve and incline familiar to him in the way that only someone who had spent thousands of miles reading pavement and terrain could understand. Marcus's hands rested lightly on the wheel, fingers aware of every vibration, every micro-movement of the tires on the asphalt, translating the road's subtle cues into instinctive adjustments, the rhythm of diesel and rubber under him blending seamlessly with his own steady heartbeat. He sipped from the thermos again, warmth spreading through his chest, a grounding ritual as he allowed his eyes to sweep over the surrounding scenery. The tilt of branches in the breeze, the glint of sunlight reflecting off a distant puddle, the way the light shifted over the asphalt, all small indicators contributing to a complete awareness of the space he occupied. The motorcycles behind him moved almost imperceptibly, engines low, hesitant, a coordinated hesitation forming as the lead rider's confidence waned, small gestures of uncertainty flickering in the angle of helmets and the shifting of body weight. Marcus flexed his fingers lightly across the wheel, feeling the texture of leather and the subtle hum of the rig, each sensation integrated into a larger map of observation, a quiet control that required no motion beyond what was necessary to maintain steady progress along the highway. The sun climbed higher, warming the cab, illuminating slight imperfections in the paint, faint scratches along the dashboard, the worn fabric of his gloves, each detail a quiet reminder of preparation and experience, of journeys undertaken and mastered without haste. The sound of wind against the windows, the faint rustle of leaves along the roadside, the distant call of a bird, and the soft vibration of diesel all layered together into a sensory map Marcus absorbed fully, integrating cues from environment, machine, and the movements of those behind him into a complete sense of timing and control. The motorcycles paused, engines and movement syncing with the momentary tension Marcus projected without effort, the lead rider leaning slightly, hesitation now unmistakable, formation imperfect. Marcus's posture remained upright, shoulders relaxed yet firm, gaze forward, breathing slow and even, each exhale deliberate, projecting quiet authority that filled the space behind him without word or gesture. The highway rolled on, smooth black asphalt reflecting the shifting sunlight, bordered by tall trees whose shadows stretched long across the road, moving gently with the breeze, a rhythm that mirrored Marcus's calm, measured control, the motorcycles trailing with an unspoken acknowledgement of presence and mastery, their earlier certainty replaced by observation, uncertainty, and an instinctive respect for the steady, deliberate authority of the driver in the cab ahead. Experience the intensity of Black stories as a courageous black trucker faces a tense encounter on an empty interstate, his every movement measured and calm, while a group of motorcycles tests his patience and composure. Follow the black trucker's silent mastery over his massive vehicle, the rhythm of diesel and asphalt guiding his steady presence as he navigates the highway with focus and awareness. A quiet authority radiating from his posture and deliberate gestures, turning potential intimidation into a showcase of control and skill. The tension escalates subtly as the motorcycles struggle to maintain formation, revealing their hesitation while the black trucker remains undisturbed, absorbing every sensory cue, from sunlight glinting off chrome to the shifting shadows of the forest, a vivid portrayal of resilience in Black stories. Witness the strategic calm and precision of the black trucker as he integrates observation, timing, and instinct, responding to environmental cues and the movements of those trailing him without haste or display, highlighting the depth of awareness and discipline that defines his character in these Black stories. Immerse yourself in the cinematic tension where the motorcycle rider's uncertainty grows, the black trucker's quiet confidence undisturbed, and the interplay of light, shadow, and motion transforms a simple drive into an extraordinary narrative of control, perception, and presence, a true testament to the compelling nature of Black stories. Character 1. A confident young black woman in her mid-20s, standing full frontal, wearing a professional casual outfit with a fitted blazer over a simple blouse and tailored pants, her hair styled naturally, expressive eyes focused forward, realistic skin texture, daylight outdoor setting, no cartoon, no CGI, no illustration, cinematic photographic quality, natural lighting, detailed textures. Character 2. A strong young black man in his late 20s, standing full frontal, wearing a rugged casual outfit with a fitted jacket over a t-shirt and cargo pants, natural short hair. Determined gaze forward, realistic skin texture, Highway outdoor setting. No cartoon. No cartoon. No CGI. No illustration. Cinematic photographic quality. Natural lighting. Detailed textures. Cinematic scene 1. Both main characters, the young black woman and the young black man, are positioned back-to-back in the center of a dimly lit urban street at dusk, their eyes scanning multiple directions as shadows of adversaries loom in the fog. Tense body language, hair and clothing subtly moved by a cold breeze, puddles reflecting scattered neon lights, cinematic depth of field highlighting expressions of determination and alertness, dynamic composition emphasizing teamwork and imminent action. Cinematic scene 2. The young black woman is walking through a bustling city morning, coffee in hand, blazer slightly open, street vendors and pedestrians blurred around her, sunlight glinting on glass storefronts. Her face showing a calm, focused expression, subtle breeze lifting strands of hair, her posture upright and purposeful, cinematic perspective capturing both her individuality and the energy of the city, shadows and light playing across her features naturally. Cinematic scene 3. The young black man is leaning against a parked truck at a rural highway stop, the sun low on the horizon casting long warm shadows, wearing a casual jacket over a t-shirt, holding a travel mug, eyes scanning the open road ahead, the rig behind him visible in soft focus, cinematic framing emphasizing solitude, strength, and vigilance, textured asphalt and roadside foliage providing realistic environmental context, subtle wind moving leaves and fabric naturally. Cinematic scene 4. Both main characters stand side by side on a highway overpass, facing a white gang leader and his entourage. Tense standoff. The fading sunset casts golden light across the scene, shadows stretching long, cars passing underneath blur with motion. The main character's expressions firm and focused, the antagonist gesturing with authority, cinematic wide-angle capturing scale, tension, and spatial relationships dynamically, environmental elements like wind and dust adding realism. Cinematic scene 5. The young black woman is in a quiet apartment interior, reading notes on a small table near a window, natural morning light filtering through blinds, small personal items scattered around, reflective expression, her posture relaxed yet alert, textures of wood and fabric highlighted by soft light. Cinematic medium shot emphasizing atmosphere, depth, and introspection without other characters present. Subtle movement of curtains and hair in a gentle breeze. Cinematic scene 6. Both main characters walk away from the highway at sunset, trucks and motorcycles in the distant background, exhausted but triumphant posture, hands brushing briefly in silent acknowledgement. Warm golden light casting long shadows, cinematic tracking shot from behind, natural wind moving clothes and hair, expressions calm yet resolute, environmental details like leaves drifting and light reflecting off metal surfaces reinforcing a sense of closure and relief. Dynamic composition creating emotional resonance as the scene fades toward the horizon.